Her experience as a group advertising director with the Hearst Corporation and as a consultant with national and global brands has given her the ability to identify and implement marketing programs that maximize her clients' investments. Her expertise in print, digital, social, and broadcast media give her a unique cross-platform insight into the needs of marketing and sales organizations. Beyond media, Kelly works with 2 artificial intelligence startups and has launched a voiceover practice. You'll enjoy listening to her. She's a past president and board chair of With It, Women in the Home Furnishings Industry, and is a mentor at the College of Charleston Business Program. She's a graduate of Iowa State University, where she studied advertising and mass communications, and she also has an executive MBA from the University of California at Berkeley. So please join me in welcoming Kelly.
Thank you, Jackie. And it's an intimate group, so we can, ask out questions, kind of converse with the information that we're going to discuss. I'm going to ask you some questions too. So feel free to kind of say, what does that really mean, or I don't get that, or if you don't agree, or I've had good luck with this. It's a time to kind of share. So what I'm going to ask you first is, of this about getting published, have any of you been published? And when you were published, was it national, regional? Was it in a social atmosphere, digital, print? What was the atmosphere that was published in?
It was a regional magazine.
A regional magazine in print?
Print and digital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did they pick up for you, or did they do new photography? How did they work
I
with you?
provided photography and the plate. Yeah, I wasn't really at the plate. I'm still new within the last
that's okay.
year, so I didn't really have that much for them to photograph besides what I brought to the table. So.
Well, but you got it in. That's a big deal. And you keep that as part of your portfolio, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. What about you?
All of it. I've been in this a long time.
Yeah, so it's like all over the place right? Well, some of this will be old hat, and actually some of it will be new because I worked at the Hearst Corporation for 22 years. I put together the large corporate buys across platforming, and Hearst has 27 brands. I also hosted editorial meetings, usually at least one a month, and I did that for multiple years. So I got to know a lot of brands that I would bring up to New York and deliberately have edit meetings with those brands to see how they could get published. So I learned a lot about the business. So the way I brought this to you today is I'm going to give you some real hardcore facts and things to do for your business to do better at setting up your plan, but also tell you what the editors are looking for and how you could get picked up easier if you understand what the editor needs. It's basically in sales, we say it's flipping the table. So you don't walk into a sales meeting and you say, this is why you want me. You walk into the sales meeting and you understand their business, and then you say, this is why I could help you. And this is going to help you do X. So that's kind of the way the whole presentation kind of lays out. So first off, I would ask you to, you're going to need to do some research about what you are thinking you want to project out. What brands project who you are as a brand. And I would tell you to only really look at 4 or 3 to 5. Do not push yourself out too far, because if you do, you have a business to run. This is a component of running your business. This isn't the whole business. So find between who it is you're going to do outreach to, what it is you want to know about them. And when you do that, when you start to focus that down, it could be brands you've seen forever and you think they have a real camaraderie against yours, or it could be somebody that you're like, I'm thinking of moving my brand to X, and this brand could help me. Then look them up and do the research. All of the brands, typically even if it's just a social brand, will have a website that they'll have, quote, a media kit. You want to go wherever look on that site and look for that media kit and find out what the demographics are. Who do they reach? What's the average age? What's the average income? What's their reach? If you're looking at social and digital, what's their click-through rate? What's their views? And truly, one of the bigger things that you need to look at, which has become much more important, is what's their engagement factor. It's not about click-throughs and views anymore, it's about engagement factor. So we'll come back to that a couple times in the talk when we're talking about social and digital, but those are very key things to think about. So, let's see, I was trying to make sure. Oh, look at the editorial calendars. You will see an editorial calendar for both digital and print, if that brand has both, or you'll just see it for the social, and figure out in that calendar where your projects could fit in, because that's how you're going to go back and talk to them. You're going to find out what they do and figure out how your brand works best for them.
So when you talk about 3 to 5 brands, is that like veranda, interior design, architecture?
Could be.
Because brands to me is Caracol, Curry Lighting,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
This isn't your brands. This is the
This
brand,
is
the
the-
mediums that you're going to go after. So if there's an Instagram, there's an influencer that you really feel you need, that could be quote one of the mediums. I refer to them as mediums because you've got Instagram, you've got Snapchat, you have Pinterest, you have all sorts of different types of mediums that you can use, but you really need to focus in and understand who those mediums reach. So it's always fascinating to me to be in corporate meetings. I called on Coke, Home Depot, lots of large companies over my lifetime, and we would sit in meetings, and the new CMO would typically always be wanting to do what was the latest and hottest thing. And then the advertising people would say, but does that reach our consumer? Because yeah, that's a really cool, shiny new toy. But if the consumer that's buying our product doesn't look at that, it's a waste of money. And sometimes the CMOs would override and say, no, we're still gonna do it, because that's what we wanna do, and it would fail, but you would learn the hard way. But always step back, and you can't always go off of what is your favorite thing, because you have to look at who your customer's favorite thing is. So be aware of what the customer looks at, what the customer's interested in, before, and then look at the products that you could go after and tailor to, so that you're actually getting that to come back to you. You will also see some guidelines about timing on the media kit. It'll tell you when the print issues close, when digital things close, so that can give you timing as to how far out you might want to submit information. Print typically closes in a 3 to 6 month window. Sometimes it's a year out. It depends on what it is. And digital closes much faster. Sometimes not quite as fast as you would think it would, but it can be different. So be aware with that. I think I needed to. There's research. So here's some other topics for research for you. I got excited and I started talking to you I went through my whole agenda. And then I would create like an Excel chart. That you would have by brand, which brands are the ones you've decided you want to do. Again, 3 to 5, don't overwhelm yourself. And then across that, who's the contact, what's the information, even give yourself a little list of, this is a little bit of the demographic profile. In that media kit, it'll give you a couple paragraphs of who they see their reader as, if it's male-female split, if that's important to you, if they own a home, all those kinds of things about if they live in A, B counties or C, D counties, all of those things that you already know about who your consumer is. See where you match up best with these brands, so that you know when you're pitching that, you already match with them. And you can tell that to the editor. I've studied your media kit. I understand that you reached X, Y, and Z. These are the things my consumer does. This is how we could work together. So they see that you've actually done that research. So then, I would ask you just to really understand your specific business goals and how your social, print, all of your presence looks. That would be, am I doing this program to get something published because I want more brand awareness? Or am I doing this because I want more people to sign up and use my product or use my service? I'm not doing it for both, because there's different strategies you would employ based on what your objectives are. You would also need to make sure that all of your stuff, when you start to push out, everything should be as up to date as possible. You may not do all of these things. You may not do a podcast. You may not do, you may not be working with influencers at this point in time, but know where your stuff is, where your lane is, and have it be as fresh as possible. So you really are kind of like understand your own engagement analytics. Because you could get a question, this is becoming more and more important to the editors, you could get a question about analytics. Like what are, if you are on Pinterest or if you are on Instagram, what are your numbers? How many followers do you have? What could you bring to the table for Vibrate? So you would want to start to talk about that. So you need to know your own house really well before you start pushing out to try and get people to work with you. Then we kind of got our big list of all these opportunities. I tell the story of when I started in the business, this electric typewriter had just been developed, and the fax machine was still the really yucky paper, and there was no voicemail, there was no ID on the telephone, and we actually still had rotary phones. We had a few that were buttons. And you got the little pink slip of paper that when you went out to lunch, your assistant handed back to you and said, oh, so-and-so called. And back then, the pie of doing anything was you had outdoor, you had television, which was 4 stations, 3 networks, and PBS. And then you had radio, which was AM and FM, and newspapers. And that was your pie. Now think about what's happened decades later. And to be very honest, in the past 20 years, budgets, if you were to look at P&G's budget or very large budgets in the United States, they have not changed. They're about flat. They go up 5% one year, they go down 5% another year, they play around. But Procter & Gamble for about the past 15, 20 years has spent about $300-400 million. That's what they spent. They're not going to increase it. So think about that pie though, of all the places that they can put that money. So not only do you have streaming TV and ITT and OTT, that's just the television side. And you got the cable networks and the network television, and then you got the social, and then you got the social, you got the Instagram and the Facebook, and you start streaming all that stuff out. You got this whole thing I just read about today that's a whole, with the stuff that's going on with TikTok, they're talking about bringing out this other thing that you could switch over from TikTok to this thing. It came out in the news today. So just more stuff. So really, really fine tune what you know about your business, and what you know about those different mediums and what works best for you. So like an example, Instagram is typically known as a visual medium. The age on Instagram averages from about 25 to 45. TikTok is known more as a video. And it is younger. It goes 25 to like 35. Facebook, LinkedIn, those tend to be more on the professional side or business side. Then you've got Snapchat, which to be honest is a kid thing. I think it's somewhat of a kid thing. So and Pinterest and House tend to be more inspirational. So know why those people go to those and why they use them. And if that's people that you work with, that are your consumer, then that's the place you should be. Kind of really focus in on that and think about what. If you don't think you're good at a podcast, don't do one. I mean, it's not for everybody. So just kind of think through that as to what works best. Oh, and do know there are classes if you're not really good with the data and how all of that works, and like how you tag and what you tag and how you tag differently on different mediums. There are really cool online courses that you can take that you can sit down one afternoon and do that, so you'll start to understand it better. So do look at that if you don't want to hire somebody that actually manages all that for you. So that was something I wanted to bring up and let you know that was there. All right, so if you're going to start, you've done all this background stuff. You figured out who you want to talk to, you figured out who you are, you've got kind of all that set up. Then how is it you're going to tell your story? So I would give you some advice as to think outside the box And truly think about, you don't need to send a full house remodel. Think about the house or the project that you've done in a series of rooms. Consumers do not shop by whole house. They shop by green bathroom, blue bedroom. And editors are constantly looking for projects that are smaller scale and that deal with a specific room in the house. So think about that. If you're doing a large project that has multiple bedrooms, 2 or 3 living spaces, you could actually cherry pick the types of projects you're sending to the type of medium that you could match it up better, and not give away your entire project that you worked forever on to one medium if that's not what you're really looking for. Because it's very rare right now that the editors are wanting to see full whole house things. So think outside of that a little bit. And they're constantly, I'm going to get to it in a minute, but they have analytics they have to report on. So this is becoming more and more important to them. So do be aware of that. So when you are telling the story, I would suggest to you, before you send them any idea you have of a project, that you've already actually communicated with them. So that would be when you've researched the brand and you signed up to go to one of their events. Let's say, I'm just picking somebody out, like House Beautiful is having an event in Dallas, and you live in Dallas, and you've been following House Beautiful. You're like, I could go to that, I'm a designer. Go to the House Beautiful event. After you go to that event, meet the people, wander around, just enjoy it. Then write to the editor and say, I was at your event. I really enjoyed this. I saw the things that you did in the bedroom. I've been working on a project that's kind of like that. Start the engagement of a conversation before you say, oh, and by the way, here's my project. Start talking to them. If you're really new at this, don't just go in cold and say, here's my project. They want to know, they're looking for people that they want to know. You don't have to do a lot. It doesn't have to be, five pages of copy. It's a short note. Make very, very sure that you do your best writing on your subject line. Your subject line is key. Get their attention so they actually even look at the email. So pay attention to that. But you should also keep it very short. So if you're pitching, let's say it's a bedroom, we're not pitching a whole house, make it short and sweet, probably 3 to 4 sentences, and then bullet your other information so they can see it right in that. Do not write in long paragraphs. It doesn't work, they won't read it. So when you're bulleting that, what are the things you could put in there? Is there any architectural reference you could give? Is there a historical reference you could give? Is someone interesting that ever owned the house? Did you use an interesting architect, or were there products that you were able to put into the house that you hadn't been able to use before? And give the name of the company, because again, I'm going to tell you why you want to have that in there. So if you're going to do before and after shots, shoot them from the same angle. Do not send before and after shots of a room that are not from the same angle. It gets very frustrating. Consumers hate it. And I know when we were on the magazine side, we would get all these different letters, like, why did they shoot it that way and it's shot this way and I can't tell where the window was, when they remodel. So do be aware of those kinds of things. If you know the photographer that works on that brand, and you may have worked with that photographer in the past, try to hire that photographer to help you, because they can shoot it the way that brand knows how they like to get shot. And you can let them know that. I've noticed that you've used John Smith as a photographer. I was able to have him be part of this project. I really am interested in working with you in this brand. We shot it in reference to what this brand is. Pay attention to the fonts of a brand. Pay attention to how they write their stories, so that you're looking at what you submit kind of falls into play with whatever that brand says. Then you also, if you have a chance, another sentence or two about you, or what is special about why that you did this project. Be prepared. There's a lot of times that the brand will want to shoot its own photography. They might not like your photography. They might not like your angles. They might want it tighter. Another thing to be aware of with photography is do not, if you can at all possible, unless you've specifically been told by the brand, do not make it seasonal. You got to keep it as unseasonal as possible. because brands they'll think, well, we're gonna run this in December, or we're gonna run this in October, and then it gets moved to June. If it's all fall colors and was all set to run in October, they're not gonna run that in June, because it's not gonna resonate. So be aware of that when you're doing the shots and when you're developing that, to pay attention to the seasonality of what you're looking at, what the windows show in the background. Is there snow on the ground? You know, because then the editor's gonna only be able to use that in a winter issue. Think through that whole process of how that's gonna look. Any questions about any of that? Okay. Is it helpful? All right, so best practices for pitches. What I said earlier, short and sweet. If you can name some names, great. That kind of ties back in. I had some people that used to, when I started my career at Better Homes and Gardens, and we had what we call field editors that were all over the United States, and they lived in different areas, and that's how they got to know different areas, and they would get houses, and we would shoot them and that kind of thing. Well, people got to know who the field editors were, and then they would pitch actually the field editors, and then the field editors would actually pitch the magazine for them. That's kind of gone by the wayside, but there are still some people that use freelancers. So if you watch bylines in, especially in print magazines, watch who the byline is and look those people up on LinkedIn and find out where they live. Because if you see that person's byline several times in that brand, that editor really likes what they do. That editor likes that freelancer's idea. So that could be somebody that you could reach out to as well and start to get to talk to and know. So just know that there's a little bit more than just that editor that you should kind of talk to. If there was a historical influence or goal of the project, like this house was gonna get torn down and they saved it historically, or any of those kinds of things, very cool to differentiate yourself from a different project. Do not send shots that you don't want published. Do not send shots that have already been published. You really have to be very careful with that. If you're really working hard to get something published, don't send shots to an influencer or somebody else to just say, oh, just kind of put it on your little Instagram. If any of that gets out, the editor tried to publish it, it does not go well. It's not a good idea. So you really have to, that's why I'm suggesting that you cherry pick the project into smaller lots, because you can push out more information in smaller things and you can control that a little bit better. Yes?
Why is that? Is that they just want to be the first to it?
It's human nature.
Okay.
We want to be the first. If Veranda got it, why would Art Digest not going to do that?
Okay.
You know, they're not going to share. No, there's no sharing.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was told that there was a woman that was gonna help me get something published, because she knew different people and whatnot. But she told me, in the process of this renovation, don't post any pictures
Okay.
of the renovation on your social media, like on my Facebook or the homeowner's Facebook or whatever. She said, you don't want anything out there because editors don't want it there.
That's correct.
So does that go for the same thing?
Yeah, that is correct.
Because I warned everybody.
Yeah, that is
Because
correct.
there's one particular
They don't-
project I'd like to have published, and
You gotta
I'm
be very careful.
safeguarded.
You safeguard it, that's correct.
Okay.
You're safeguarded. And then what you would do is then go back with your befores and your afters and really fine tune what tells the story.
Right.
You know, and that's you know where you're developing to create the whole content of how that story came about. But you would not
Okay.
publish it at all. They won't, because they'll be like, no, people already know about this. I'm not making the impact that they could make.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions on this one? Okay, so this is some other information about engaging, and I mentioned a little bit about this before, about really trying to talk to people, not just send them stories. That's why I also recommend that you get a small group so that you can put this in your daily calendar. Like, so a salesperson, when they have to do outreach for sales, it's just a habit. You would say, okay, I'm gonna meet with somebody. You're like, well, reach out in 2 weeks. So I just go to my calendar, make a little note on my calendar, like reach out to this person 2 weeks from now, and it shows up on my calendar that day. Then I know to do it, it gets done real quick. They may not reply to me or not, but then I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it another 2 weeks, and I just push it out another 2 weeks. People who know me well know that I do this a lot. But it is a way to make sure that somebody eventually replies to you. And you do it nicely, you're not hounding, but set up a system that works for you. And set it up so it's part of your day, so it doesn't overwhelm you. What most people say when they look at PR plans is the plan itself overwhelms them. How am I gonna get this done? How am I gonna get all this stuff out? How am I gonna continue to have conversations with these editors? It's a very simple, if you've got 3 to 5 people you need to talk to over a 5-week period, 1 a week, and you're still ahead of time. And all you're doing is saying, you know, I saw this article. I saw an article in House Beautiful 2 months ago that you wrote about this, but there was a whole article in the Wall Street Journal this week that talked about the changes that are occurring here. Just a little note, thought you might like it. Then again, what you're doing is developing a rapport with that particular person so that, hey, I've got an idea, I've given you these other ones, this is something I've worked on, could you look at this? And they will be more open to doing that because you have given them ideas along the way. So it's a unique way of positioning yourself differently than a standard, you know, just straight PR push and press release. So, what is the standard? What do most people, when most people reach out to do anything, to try and sell you something, to try and pitch you something, how many times do they reach out? Anybody? 90%, how many? 90% of the people do this.
Only one time.
Close. 90% of the people do 1 to 3 outreach, and they never go past it. And I mean, I can't tell you how many young sellers I've worked with over the years, and they're like, Kelly, I emailed them, and they didn't reply. And I'll be like, well, email them again. You know, that's not a no. You haven't gotten a no. Once you get a no, then it's a no. But if you haven't gotten a no, you keep going. And they're like, you do? I'm like, yeah. Isn't that gonna hurt you? That person writes you back and tells you, no, it's okay. Life goes on. It's a business decision. It's fine. Tell them. So if you go 4, 5, 8 times where you just reach out and say, hey, I don't know if you've seen these, but this was something really cool I saw. Thanks. If you can reply, great. I have a couple of different lines. Again, people who know me know my lines. Sometimes I'll say at the end of it, if it's like my 4th or 5th time, thank you in advance for your reply. Let me know what you're thinking. And I get more conversational. I get to the last part where I was like, I've written you multiple times. I know at some point in time you've seen some of these. And I really don't need to keep writing you. And I will stop if you could just reply and tell me that everything's okay. And they do. It's amazing. Play with it, have some fun. It's humans. We for some reason, we don't talk as much with each other anymore. Nobody likes to talk on the telephone. So why not have some fun with your email and play back with it? That, you know, is it gonna hurt you? You're being nice, you're being friendly. So I just have a little more fun with it than your standard, like, really hardcore stuff. I wonder if let's see if I got it. Yeah, I think I got it. So I have a question for you. Who knows what affiliate marketing is? Okay. So affiliate marketing is something that really came into its own during COVID. So when you go online, let's say you're on, I'll just stay with House Beautiful. You're on House Beautiful's website and you're scrolling down and there is a product shot and then there's a description of the product, because you've seen a really pretty room, right? And they're pulling out the products for each one for what's in the room, the lamp, the rug, that kind of thing. And then you see a little button that says click to buy or click for more information. And that you click on that button and that button takes you to, let's say, Pallet Check's website. And you decide, I'm gonna buy that lamp. I like that lamp. And you buy it. Well, when you buy that lamp, depending upon the Pallet Check's relationship with House Beautiful, Pallet Check pays House Beautiful a percentage of what that lamp cost. And that can vary anywhere from 5 to 15 to 20% of the cost of that product. So that built up. Think about all the people who stayed home during COVID, and think about the products that were being purchased. At that particular time, I was working on Good Housekeeping. And Good Housekeeping saw in 1 year, our affiliate sales, just in a year, went from 0 to 400 million. Big change in the profit margin for that brand, because that was a brand new profit center. Never had that money before. So what companies have done is they have developed, large companies have developed affiliate programs. Now, why I'm explaining all this to you is because affiliate programs now are part of an editor's performance review, which most people don't know. It was something I learned when I was at Hearst. So when an editor writes a story and it's online, if that story does not appear in the top 5 stories in Google search, that editor is deemed. And that editor is also looked at as how much money she brings in and how much revenue her stories bring in off of affiliate. So in essence, he or she becomes a salesperson. So I've got a good example for you. When I was at Good Housekeeping, it was 2021. The textile editor at the Good Housekeeping Institute was writing a story on pillows. And it was January. You know, in January they always, I don't know if they do it that much anymore, but it was always the white sales. So you'd have the sheets and the pillows and everybody's kind of changing out their beds. So she was writing a story on pillows. And she wrote the story. And it's kind of okay. It's trending down in the bottom half of the top 10. And she's like, this is not good. I got to get that sucker back. I got to get it up above the fold. So she went to the data science team at Hearst and she said, I want you to go and search for me all the search words that consumers are using to look for pillows. Because I obviously have the wrong words in this story and I've written it in the wrong context. They did, sent her like 10 or 15 words. She rewrote the story. For the next 8 to 12 weeks, that was the #1 pillow story on Google search in 2021. And it's still highly ranked, even 4 years later. So when you, my suggestion to you in this is twofold. One, if you are working with specific manufacturers that are larger ones, say it's Wolf or Thermador, because these guys have affiliate relationships with different brands, not just Hearst. They have affiliate relationships with Dotdash, they have them with Google, they have them with Facebook. There's affiliate relationships across the board. If you can, in your project, in some of your bullets, say this project is all Thermador, or this project is all Sub-Zero, or it's all Kohler, you can help that editor know if that can improve her affiliate scores without saying, I'm trying to improve your affiliate scores. So it's something to think about with how that works. Now, how that has now morphed is, and I'll just give you a little more history on the ad side, is who knows what a retail media network is? Anybody know what that is? That one's peachy. That one came out during COVID as well. So the story behind that one, the first one that really was actually well known is Macy's. So during COVID, Macy's, everybody stopped going in brick and mortar. And Macy's was like, we gotta fix this. This is not good. We still gotta make our numbers. They're publicly traded, the whole bit. So they came up with the idea that we have all these things in store. We'll just expand the website and we'll get those guys who are gonna do in-store signage to pay for ads on the website, and we'll just drive it on the website. Well, that's how Macy's made their number during COVID, is they moved all that advertising, quote, what we would call co-op dollars from years ago, they moved all that money over to the retail media network. Now, if you were to look at Walmart, Costco, Home Depot, Lowe's, Nordstrom's, Macy's, you name the large retailer, and it's moving down to other retailers, that's a new profit center for them. So think for years, I went to Home Depot or Costco and sold them our stuff so they would run ad campaigns. And they would take co-op dollars and they would run ad campaigns on Hearst. They don't have to do that anymore. They own the shopping process. They can tell, Walmart can tell you who bought what, when, where. And then, so P&G is mandated now to spend like $20 million on the retail media network. And that's new money for Walmart. They used to spend it over on Hearst. So what I'm seeing happen is as you deal with other retailers, you may hear about a retail media network. It may not be in your scope for a long time, but it is growing, like ballooning. And it carries, with those particular companies, it carries tremendous clout. So it's something that you can kind of take with you. You can have a good dinner conversation saying, do you know what a retail media network is? They're taking over. And then how AI is going to affect your business. You know, there's lots of different things about AI. As Jackie mentioned, I'm a senior advisor on 2 AI startups. They both actually work in the home space. One is primarily does photography and room scenes and all of that. The other one actually works, it's kind of a cool product in that, let's say you've got Haverty's and you're a consumer and you picked a really cool sofa and you want to make the room. But you don't want to go through the whole Haverty's website to figure out what's in stock or whatever. You put in some information, put in your zip zone, so it pulls from that store what's in stock, and it'll show you a room of here's 3 rugs, here's 4 lamps, that kind of thing, and pare it down that you could buy it online or you can take it into the store and purchase. So it brings down that what we refer to as a proliferation of choice. You give people too many choices, they won't choose. So you've got to really kind of scope in how much you do and what you do. So there's some really cool things happening. Don't just think of AI as ChatGPT. It is way beyond that. I liken it to when digital started, we all thought about websites, internet. It was the internet. And then everything was digital, but yet we had digital, and then we had social, and then we had these other things that kind of pop up like a Snapchat or you know, the different names that don't, the Vine, things that aren't even around anymore. So think of AI is up here, but you have Alexa is AI, Google Maps is AI, ChatGPT is AI, but there are other things that are all AI that are not the things that we see a lot of. But we've been using AI actually for almost 2 decades, if you think about it. So, but be aware of it, of how you could play with it or use it in your business. And then I wanted to give you a little bit of context about influencers and content providers, because there is a definite difference in using them, and there's a difference in cost. So as an independent, you know, entrepreneur or a designer, both have their value and both are good to use, but know why you're using them or why not. So an influencer, you are using them to get to their community, to reach their community, and the influencer will write and work with you about your product, but the influencer will write it and then put it out and post it to the community. Different cost structure. A content provider will work with you, may or may not have a community, but their expertise is in developing the content. So if you're looking at developing a content library or developing content that you can use in multiple places, to be honest, a content provider is going to be more economical and a better use of your money than an influencer is. It just really depends on what it is. Again, I go back to what it is you're trying to do. What is the strategy and what's the objective? When you are using an influencer though, do let the influencer tell you when's the best time to run it, because the influencer knows his or her audience better than anybody else. So if you think it should run on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and that influencer says, nope, my top time is at midnight on Saturday night, then let him or her tell you that and go with that, and then tweak it. Please don't do any of these kinds of programs as one-offs. They don't work. Nothing in advertising works as a one-off. So it's a waste of your money. If you can't invest in a 2, 3, 6 month program, it doesn't have to be every day or all that kind of thing, but look at how you're spreading out your program and developing it so that you actually can see and judge, and you can tweak the impact across the program, but don't do one-offs. It doesn't work. It's not good for you. So, and then you should ask them about their engagement factor. There are what we call micro and nano influencers. So for years, right when digital started and that kind of thing, everybody looked at how many views you got, how many clicks you got, and everybody was raising millions and millions, and well, she's got 20 million and she's got 50 million. Well, that's good and fine for certain objectives. But if you're looking at really intimate design things where you're trying to get somebody to call you and say, I want to hire you to design my rooms, look for smaller micro or nano that's basically in the 50,000 to 700,000 influencer, because they have stronger engagement factors. They'll have an engagement that lasts 5 minutes, 10 minutes, which is extremely rare. You will not get that kind of engagement factor with people that have 50 million viewers. You might every now and then, might be Michelle Obama, but it's not the norm. So be aware of that. More isn't always better. It's that quality and quantity thing. So pay attention to what works best for your business. So, quick tips to remember as we get to our conclusion. Know your audience and know what you want to do. Have a timely plan, kind of like as I told you to start kind of figuring that out and kind of figuring out what works best for you. Use professional photography. If you don't self-publish anything you want published, it won't go. You won't get it published. And contact a small group, follow up, and know what your affiliate opportunities are that you can help the editors with. And that concludes my presentation for today. Any questions?
Do we have any access to these slides that you presented?
Yeah, if you want to give me your card, I can send it to you.
Yeah.
I think I have to, Jackie, I have to WeTransfer it because it's a big file.
I can help you.
Yeah, Jackie runs the ICFA, so we can get it. Yeah. I hope you found it helpful and you're going home with some good stuff that you're going to use. I think you should get meat that you can use.
I didn't know you started by researching your brands and looking at their editorial calendars and.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah.
It really does, because and go to the magazine if you wanted to see some print brands. I love to go if you're in the airport or if you're at the grocery store and stand in front of the magazine rack and look at what magazines are still out there. Pick it up. You don't have to buy it if you don't want to. Read through it. Look on the masthead of who's publishing it, where you can contact them, or it'll say what the website is. Write it down. So it's not something you have to purchase, but get a feel for that, and then you may want to subscribe to it or not. And see what those editors are working on and that kind of thing. It's very helpful. And do that with the websites too.
I know here in Atlanta, like Atlanta Homes and Jezebel and different magazines have events through the
They
year.
do. And you have really cool events from magazines. National magazines come down and do events at ADAC. Veranda does, House Beautiful does, because I was part of those events. So ADAC has a whole schedule when they do their stuff. And you can see, I think Art Digest has been down here and done stuff. Lux does events here as well.
Is there a comparison, like we were talking about micro and nano influencers? Would it also be advantageous to reach out to the smaller brand magazines?
Yes.
Do they have a higher?
Well, they're hungry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really, again, you really need to be very, very candid with yourself about what are my goals? What is it I am trying to accomplish? Because, as I mentioned earlier, you're running a business, and this is a small component of that business. It can help you grow it significantly, but it shouldn't overtake your world. So you just kind of need to manage that. So if you think that you have a better shot with like 3 smaller regional things, go for that. And then build from there and say, these were projects that I got published. These are things like home design that's down in Florida. I met the publisher there. I did a talk in Florida for IBS, a different talk that down in Florida in November, and met with a bunch of them and designers, and we talked about some of that. And that magazine's beautiful too. I actually got my pictures in there. It was cool. I've never had my picture in a magazine. Anything else? Well, we have some wine and cheese for everyone.